She wants to have an arranged marriage meeting with me. There must be some mistake," Bob said as he looked at the letter in his hand again. It was definitely addressed to him, no doubt about it. The other party was the daughter of one of his company's major clients. She was a woman with all kinds of rumors constantly swirling around her. Why me? Bob wondered. He did not want to put himself down, but he was the CEO of a nearly bankrupt, run-down company. What benefit would there be for a woman to marry a man like that? With those thoughts weighing on his mind, Bob went to the arranged marriage meeting. Faced with the young lady's beauty, he was nervous, but then she said with a flushed face and misty eyes, "I like a man like you." And so, Bob and Annie's relationship deepened. "This month is tough, too. What should I do?" Bob lamented, holding his head in his hands as he hunched over the ledger filled with red ink. "I am Bob Ashley, 32 years old. It had been 4 years since I took over Ashley Industries, which had been in my family for generations. I had intended to inherit and further develop the technology, company, factories, and talent that had been passed down. However, with the impact of unexpected pandemics and overseas situations, as peer companies and clients scaled back operations, our company couldn't avoid being affected too. In a panic, I made one bad move after another as contracts were severed left and right. And now we are in this miserable state. I couldn't let my loyal employees end up on the streets. But in my mind, already at wit's end, drew a blank. I needed some fresh air, so I stepped outside for a moment, averting my eyes from the red ledger. What's this? I noticed a letter in the mailbox as I went to stretch outside. It was a pure white envelope, unlike the kind that came from government offices and the like. My hand reached out, drawn to that eye-catching envelope. "Huh? Hey, is this for real?" I exclaimed out loud when I saw the contents inside. The sender was Corny Technology, one of my few major clients, and the letter was a proposal for an arranged marriage meeting with Corny's daughter, Annie. An arranged marriage for the CEO of a renowned company is surprising enough, but with that young lady, I scratched my head as I read the letter. Annie was 25, if I recalled correctly, 7 years younger than me. She was quite a beauty, but apparently had some personality issues. Well, I hadn't heard many good rumors about her. The most famous one was that she was extremely harsh and bullying towards her younger sister. Because of that, not only was the relationship between the sisters poor, but the whole family dynamic was strained, apparently. I wondered why she would propose an arranged marriage with someone like me, and honestly, I had no desire to agree to a meeting with a woman with such bad rumors surrounding her. That said, it's not like I have the leeway to refuse, I thought. My top priority was rebuilding the company, so this wasn't the time to be doing marriage meetings. But the other party was an important client, larger in scale than my own company. I couldn't be rude and refuse without even meeting her. What a pain, I grumbled, letting out a big sigh. I had come out here intending to take a refreshing break, but now I felt even heavier than before. With heavy footsteps, I returned to my office to write a letter agreeing to the unwanted arranged marriage meeting. Things proceeded quickly after that, and a few days after sending my reply, the day of my meeting with Annie arrived. In a private room at a refined traditional restaurant, I waited nervously for her arrival, unaccustomed to the atmosphere. Well now, I wonder what kind of wicked woman will show up. I had heard the rumors but never actually seen her before, so I was a little curious. Well, no matter what kind of woman she was, I had no intention of getting married at this point, so I planned to find a way to politely decline. As I was racking my brain for an excuse to refuse without damaging the relationship with her family's company, the sliding door in front of me quietly opened. "Sorry to keep you waiting," a voice said. The woman who appeared was a stunning beauty that made I unconsciously stare in awe. Already awkward with women, I fell into a panic. Annie didn't react to my uncool stammering, and quietly took a seat. Her cat-like eyes, framed by long lashes, were downcast, making it hard to read her expression. But every one of her gestures was graceful, and combined with her beauty and aura, the space she occupied was like a painting. We exchanged greetings and introductions, but Annie was soft-spoken and barely said a word. My hobby is cycling. What about you, Annie? Do you have any hobbies?" I asked. I like sewing. Especially dressmaking, she replied. Dressmaking? So you make your own clothes? You must be good with your hands. That's amazing. No, I'm just an amateur who enjoys it. You don't have to be so modest. If there's a chance sometime, I'd love to see her sew. Oh, I guess that was too forward of me, huh? I kept trying to fill the silence, but the conversation was hardly flowing. Man, I was really struggling to keep the conversation going, I thought. Just 30 minutes in, and I was already tapped out. I'm not much of a chatterbox myself, but this girl makes me look downright chatty in comparison. I'd heard rumors that she had a nasty personality, so maybe she was just keeping her trap shut to hide it. But darn, it made me wonder if she even wanted to be at this arranged marriage meeting at all. Her poker face and one-word responses were starting to wear me down. I mean, I was beginning to doubt if she was taking this thing seriously at all. Still, I tried my best to draw out her words, but in the end, Annie barely spoke, and then our time was up. I couldn't even verify the rumors, let alone get any sense of who Annie was as a person. I was positive this thing was headed for Splitsville. So you can imagine my surprise when she reached out saying let's meet up again. Did she actually have a good time? Or was there some other reason she wanted to push ahead with this? Heck if I know what she was thinking. A few days passed and I was still stumped. So anyway, that day I was at this fancy shindig, rubbing elbows with top brass from all kinds of industries. A big shot party like this was way out of my league, but a company president I go way back with roped me into going. The place was huge and jam-packed with these impressive executive types. I felt like a total schlub in comparison. I was starting to regret even showing up and was gonna make a break for some corner to hide in. That's when I spotted two ladies a few tables over, one in a blue dress and one in pink. Blue dress was holding a glass of wine, giggling and bubbling with life. Pink dress, though, was stiff as a board. Huh? I did a double take when I realized the statue-like gal was none other than Annie, my mystery date from the other day. Well, I'll be darned, she's here too. So then pink dress has gotta be. I was squinting, trying to get a good look at the other girl's face, when all of a sudden Annie grabbed a glass of water off the table. And then, she just up and yeek. This blood-curdling shriek rang out. Annie had chucked the water right at pink dress. I could see Annie's dainty hand shaking a bit as she gripped that glass. The poor-drenched girl was shell-shocked for a second, but then these big old tears started welling up in her eyes. Big sis. Wait, hold up. Did she say big sis? The waterlogged lady was Annie's little sister Mary. This all went down so fast, everyone around was frozen in shock. But then a few folks heard Mary's sniffly voice and rushed over to her. Holy crud. So this is the infamous sister bullying I've heard about. That's rough. Mary's expertly made-up face and hair for the party, not to mention her super cute sparkly dress, were completely soaked. Annie shot her a quick look, then turned on her heel and bailed. Not a single sorry or nothing. I watched her waltz away in that deep blue dress of hers. Who throws water on someone out of the blue like that? She's always treating her like that, isn't she? Poor little sis. I could hear people gossiping and clucking their tongues. The drenched Mary was bawling her eyes out while a bunch of sympathetic partygoers fussed over her. They were saying stuff like, "How Mary, honey, you didn't do anything wrong," and generally trying to make her feel better. Man, accidentally witnessing a bullying incident like that in the middle of a crowded party really killed my mood. Even though I only met Annie once, it stung to see somebody I'd actually talked to acting like that. Heck, I'm so over this. I'm out of here. I'd had it up to here with this awkward, unpleasant situation. I decided to call it a night and hightailed it out of there. The crisp winter air felt good as I stepped outside and took a deep breath in and out. After a few more breaths, I was feeling a little better and headed to my car. On the way, I kept thinking back on what had just happened. And he didn't seem like the type to pull something like that at our marriage meeting. Guess she was just putting on a sweet act, huh? I barely knew anything about the sisters' relationship. Heck, I had no clue they had bad blood between them. Or was that a common occurrence for her? If that's the case, would I also face the same thing every day if I married her? I should probably decline that proposal after all. I shook my head as if to dispel the miserable image of married life that had spread in my mind. At times like this, I crave something sweet. I was thinking about stopping by a convenience store on the way home when I noticed a person crouching under a dim street light in the far corner of the parking lot. Was someone feeling unwell? As I approached to check on the person, my eyes were drawn to the clothes the person was wearing. It was a familiar deep blue dress. Ms. Annie. The person was startled at the words I muttered unintentionally. It was none other than Annie herself standing before me. It was mid-December, late at night, and the temperature had dropped considerably. Upon closer inspection, I could see that her ears and fingertips had turned red from the cold, and her body was shivering. I quickly took off the coat I was wearing and draped it over her shoulders. "What are you doing out here without a coat? What if you catch a cold?" I couldn't help but raise my voice. Annie, alarmed by my tone, looked up at me. Her cheeks were wet with tears. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Realizing I had made her cry, I reflexively apologized. "No, it's not your fault." Her emotional voice and way of speaking, so different from when we met the other day, took me by surprise and brought me back to my senses. In stark contrast, Annie was shedding tears and her shoulders were trembling. I couldn't very well leave a crying woman out in this cold. "Let's go somewhere else for now. You're not exactly dressed for this weather, and it would be terrible if you caught a cold." With that, I guided her to my car. Surprisingly, she obediently followed my lead. I had her sit in the back seat and started driving. "If we go somewhere warm, she'll probably feel a bit better. But man, what a situation I've found myself in." I let out a soft sigh in my mind as I glanced at Annie's downcast face, her eyes red, reflected in the rearview mirror. After driving for about 10 minutes, we arrived at my apartment building. I showed Annie up to my place on the 5th floor and had her take a seat for the time being. I couldn't even remember the last time I had invited a woman over. The fact that it was my prospective marriage partner, with whom I was considering breaking things off, made me feel a strange sense of fate and nervousness. Perhaps that's why I couldn't think of anything to say, and we both remained silent. Annie was the first to speak. "Bob, thank you very much." Her expression seemed to soften just a little as she once again expressed her gratitude. "Not at all. I never would have thought I'd run into you in a place like that, even if it was by chance. You're absolutely right. And to let you see me in such an embarrassing state." Annie nodded her head as she spoke. Rather than embarrassment, it seemed more like a sense of apology. Well, I was certainly surprised. But not in a bad way or anything. Not knowing the right thing to say in this situation, I laughed and glossed over it. Annie gave me a very faint but genuine smile as she watched me. My heart skipped a beat. Even though I thought I had been disillusioned after seeing her true colors, I found myself captivated by the slightest glimpse of her smile. I felt like laughing at myself for being so weak to women. I know. That dress is really lovely." To cover up my own inner turmoil, I brought up the subject of the dress that had caught my eye. Seeing it up close like this, not only was the fabric high quality, but there was also delicate, beautiful embroidery on the sleeves and other parts. Come to think of it, she had mentioned at the matchmaking meeting that sewing was her hobby. I didn't know if she could actually make a dress by hand, as I was ignorant in that area, but I was relieved to have found a topic of conversation and turned to her. "Could it be that you made that dress yourself, Annie? You mentioned before that sewing was your hobby, right?" At my words, Annie's expression clouded over. "Huh? Did I screw up? This dress. It's a very precious memento left to me by my late mother. Is that so? I'm sorry. Even if I didn't know, Annie quietly shook her head at my words. "Please don't worry about it. It's been over 10 years since my mother passed away. And I was happy that you complimented this dress, Bob. My family always said it was old-fashioned. No way. The embroidery is beautiful, and it has a nice retro feel to it. I mean, I'm a total fashion novice, so maybe it doesn't sound very convincing coming from me. Thank you very much. It's something my mother wore when she was young, but it's very precious to me," Annie said with a sad smile. That expression made my chest tighten as I sensed her feelings for her mother. I rarely attend parties, so this is the only dress I own. Annie shifted her gaze toward the hem of the dress. Puzzled, I followed her line of sight. I hadn't noticed at all in the dimly lit parking lot, but there was a fairly large stain on the skirt. It looked reddish, So it was probably wine from today's party. There's a stain. My sister spilled wine on it. What? I couldn't help but raise my voice at Annie's words. Come to think of it, at that time, as I said that, I recalled the moment when I saw the two of them facing each other. Annie had remained still as if enduring something. And the other person, Mary, was holding a glass of wine in her hand. Her face was smiling. Bob, you were there at that time, weren't you? Yes, by chance. Don't tell me, right before that. Yes. She laughed at this dress, and then the wine. As if recalling that moment, Annie's small white hands clenched tightly. I just couldn't forgive her for staining this precious dress. That's why I impulsively threw water. That's horrible. Learning the truth about that scene, I unintentionally let those words slip out. Annie was smiling with a somewhat resigned look. It's always been like this. After my mother passed away, my father remarried. It was no longer the family I knew. So it's the fault of the new mother. Although I thought it was rude to pry into another family's home environment, I couldn't help but ask. At my words, Annie smiled with a troubled expression. No, maybe things had been gradually going wrong even before that. After my mother passed away, my father was depressed, and Mary was acting strangely cheerful to the point where I was worried about her. Then, 2 years later, Ray, came along. I could tell that my father cherished Ray, and although Mary and I were still not over the loneliness of losing our mother, we accepted Ray. I think that's a story that could happen in any household. However, what was different from others was what happened next. At first, Ray was kind to me too, and I was glad that my father had remarried a good person and that we could become a family. But around the time I entered high school, Ray started to become withdrawn. Before I knew it, my father, Mary, and Ray started treating me coldly. Did Ray say something to them? I don't know. After the remarriage, Ray was genuinely kind to me. It was so sudden for me that I couldn't comprehend it at all. But maybe Ray was also suffering without my knowledge. From around that time, Mary was doted on by my father and Ray to an extent that could be called blindly. The treatment she received from her family, as she recounted, was terrible. Although they allowed her to attend school up to university, Annie's existence was at the very lowest in the family. She was ignored and ridiculed at their whims and needed permission for everything she did. In contrast, her younger sister Mary was indulged in every selfish request and was bought everything. As she stroked the stained dress, Annie's eyes wavered. Mary, that child, is very lonely and a real crybaby. Since long ago, she always clung to me and our parents, making a big fuss about wanting to do everything together. As if recalling something, she let out a nostalgic laugh. Her face was gentle and kind. Perhaps it was indeed like that when they were little, but now that they're grown up, her sister is someone who harasses her. Even though she should be able to hate her, I couldn't sense such emotions from Annie. You find it strange, don't you? I do too. Even though it might be easier if I hate her, I just can't bring myself to do so. Maybe I'm just clinging to past memories because the present is painful. Seeing Annie's lowly smile made my heart ache. Although I don't have siblings myself, I was raised in a household with good family relationships. Even though they ran a company, my grandparents and parents were all very ordinary people, and there was absolutely no discrimination or harassment between family members. That's why, to be honest, I can't fully understand Annie's family environment, and I can't help but wonder if such a family really exists. However, it didn't seem like she was lying. There were various rumors about her being a wicked woman, but actually talking to her like this, I can't sense even a hint of such an atmosphere from her. Rather, my impression was quite the opposite. Her polite and humble demeanor, her lonely profile, and the way she endures and desperately tries to accept her current situation, it all made me want to embrace her, as she appears so lovely and fleeting. But it was still painful, so I thought about leaving that house. That's when my father and Ray brought up the idea of an arranged marriage. Wait, so, the arranged marriage with me. I found it strange. Why did the marriage proposal come to someone like me? From her parents' perspective, maybe they just wanted to drive away their bothersome daughter, and she too wanted to distance herself from her family, even if it meant having an arranged marriage with someone like me. Using marriage as a means. It's true that was the initial reason. But when I actually met you, Bob, I found you to be such a wonderful person." After saying that much, Annie's face turned bright red and she covered her cheeks with both hands. "I don't think I had any good points that day though." "That's not true at all. You had only good points. You were gentlemanly and kind, and even though I was so nervous that I couldn't talk at all, you listened attentively to what I had to say. And above all," after saying that much in one breath, she suddenly became fidgety. I like big, tall men. Bob, you are like the embodiment of my ideal type. Although I have a muscular build from working on site for a long time before taking over as CEO from my father, I never thought it would prove useful in a situation like this." Seeing Annie with her face bright red and her body stiff, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Bob, no, sorry. I just never thought I was seen that way." Her reaction, with her eyes wide in surprise, was so adorable that I felt an emotion welling up from the depths of my heart that I had never experienced before. "Annie." "Yes." Her flustered response to my every word was so cute that I had to desperately hold back from laughing again. I had to convey my sincere feelings, so I couldn't be grinning like an idiot. "Please go out with me with the intention of getting married." "What?" "After hearing your story, Annie, I thought I wanted to do whatever I could for you. And if that path is through marriage, I don't mind at all even if I'm being used." At my words, Annie's face stiffened. She probably had that intention at first too. She likely agreed to this arranged marriage as an escape route, in other words, with the intention of using me. But it's not because I pity you, Annie. If it were any other woman, I would feel sorry for them but still decline. It's because it's you, Annie, that I thought it would be okay even so. Bob, you praise me, but I'm not handsome, just big. And the company I manage is on the verge of bankruptcy, so I could become penniless at any moment. Even I think, to be honest, that I'm a dud as a marriage partner. That's not true at all. Thank you, Annie. Even though I lack in various ways, I have no intention of losing to anyone when it comes to loving those I cherish. To me, the people I cherish are my family, friends, and companions. Family. Annie murmured as if savoring my words with a serious expression. After talking with you like this today, Annie, and getting to know you a little bit, I thought I wanted to become family with you. I paused there and looked straight at Annie's face. I wished for my sincere feelings to be conveyed to her. I want to protect you, Annie, so please, go out with me. And then I held out my hand. Bob, really? I heard Annie's tearful voice. Sensing a faint hope in her voice, I raised my head and nodded firmly in response to her question. I'm so happy. With those words, Annie broke down crying. Tears overflowed endlessly from both her eyes. I found myself going to her side and drawing her body close to me. She was much more delicate than she looked, making me feel like I might break her with my great physical strength. I tried to touch her as gently as possible while enveloping her body in my arms. Then, as if calming down, Annie called my name in a small voice from within my arms. Bob. I could feel my own body growing hot at the sound of her voice. Overwhelmed with the joy welling up from my chest, I unintentionally tightened my arms around her. It might be suffocating. As I hurriedly tried to separate from her, Annie's slender arms held me back. Don't let go. Please. Annie, I will do my best to be of use to you from now on. I shook my head at Annie, who said that with a serious expression. That's not it, Annie. Huh? I smiled at Annie, who had an anxious look on her face. You don't have to shoulder everything alone anymore. Let's do our best together. Yes. After saying that happily, her face brightening, Annie buried her face in my chest. It felt ticklish and embarrassing, a strange feeling, but I could feel warmth filling my heart. Bob. Thank you. I could hear her muffled voice from around my chest. For some reason, tears threatened to spill at the sound of her gentle voice. I should be the one thanking you. And I gently hugged my beloved girlfriend, putting just a little bit of strength into my arms. The next day, I officially informed both of our families that we were in a relationship with the intention of getting married. While my parents were surprised, they shed tears of joy. From Annie's family, however, we only received a single phone call saying they acknowledged it, but she didn't need to come home. I knew it was rude, but when I offered that we wanted to live together with marriage in mind, they readily gave their consent. Well, for our part, we wanted to separate Annie from her family as soon as possible, so it was all quite convenient. And so, Annie and I started living together, and she began helping with work as well. I'll never forget the faces of the employees when I introduced Annie to them. They all had "no way" written on their faces. Well, I guess they never expected a combination of such a beautiful woman and a bear-like man like me, so it couldn't be helped. While our private life was moving along smoothly, the company's management didn't improve with that momentum. We were still struggling as before. Then one day, Annie called me to the CEO's office, saying she had something to discuss. On the table were several sheets of paper labeled as proposals. The names of the planners varied, and Annie's name was there too. These are, while talking with everyone at the office, I got a lot of ideas. So I wanted to discuss them with you. As I listened to Annie's bouncy voice, I quickly skimmed through the papers. Although I couldn't examine the contents in detail, many of the documents had memos written on sticky notes. In addition to unfamiliar work and new human relationships, Annie was also taking care of the household chores, including managing my health. I was happy that she did so much for the sake of the company, but to be honest, I was worried that she might be overworking herself. I appreciate your help, but you don't have to push yourself, okay? It's fine. It's certainly busy and tough, but I'm really enjoying it. Her vibrant smile seemed to shine brilliantly. However, I couldn't help but worry that I was making her overdo it. After going through such hardships, she should be able to live a little more comfortably now without any consequences. Annie, it's okay for you to relax at home, Before I knew it, those words escaped my mouth. However, Annie shook her head. I'm fine. I'm not the same as I was back then. I swallowed my words at her strong statement and eyes. Certainly, when I was at home, it was suffocating and painful to feel like I was being watched no matter what I did. But it's different here. Everyone respects me and listens to what I have to say. If I do something wrong, they properly correct me, and conversely, when I do well, they rejoice even more than I do. They're all such warm people. You've gotten so close with everyone. Yes. They share all kinds of stories with me. I might even be closer to them than you are. And he winked at me playfully. I couldn't help laughing at her adorable gesture. At the same time, I was impressed by how much she had opened up to the employees in such a short time. I never would have imagined it from the stiff and nervous Annie, who had just arrived at our place. Remembering those days, I suddenly gasped. My earlier remark, "Why don't you just relax at home?" I had meant to say it out of concern for her. My feelings for her are genuine. In response, Annie smiled at me and said she was fine. I could tell that her smile was a sincere one. Nevertheless, I was trying to silence her will and confine her in a cage called home. Isn't that no different from them? As I was about to hang my head in dejection, Annie gently enveloped my hand and smiled. Annie, your kindness is definitely reaching me. It's okay. Hearing those words, I found myself hugging Annie. I'm sorry. I should have understood the most. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Annie's gentle voice seemed to permeate my heart. Hey, do you remember? We're supposed to do our best together, right? I see you working hard every day as I send you off. I want to do my best too. Those were the words I had said to her on the day I asked her to be in a relationship with me, when she was trying to shoulder everything alone. I'm happy that you really care about me, but if there's something I can do, I want to give it my all. Annie said in a clear voice, though looking a bit embarrassed. If I'm going to live with you, I think it's necessary. Annie, these are important feelings that were born within me while spending time with you and everyone at the company. That's why I want you. I want you to understand. I couldn't sense any of the lack of confidence she had before in Annie now. It may be presumptuous of me to say, but I think Annie has grown in these past few days. My desire to protect her hasn't changed. But Annie, my precious person, is not a weak person who only needs to be protected, but a reliable partner who walks the path together with me. I was wrong. Annie, thank you. Bob. I gently caressed the cheek of Annie, who showed a bright smile at my words. As if on cue, Annie slowly closed her eyes. I slowly brought my face closer to Annie's, my heart pounding. Hey, don't push. SHH. Be quiet, or they'll notice us. Voices could be heard from beyond the door of the CEO's office. It seemed Annie had heard them too, and we looked at each other. Then we quietly opened the door. The employees came tumbling into the CEO's office. Autumn. They all had awkward expressions and forced smiles on their faces. I let out a grand sigh, but Annie laughed merrily and then said, "Perfect timing. Let's all give a presentation to Bob together." She clapped her hands and began eagerly gathering the proposals. Seeing that, everyone else also gathered around Annie, chattering excitedly. The sweet atmosphere from earlier had been blown away in an instant, but it had been so long since I'd seen everyone so lively. Before I knew it, I was smiling too. And so, with everyone discussing together, the project to revive Ashley Industries began. It was the development of a new fiber that applied the metal processing technology we had cultivated over many years. The idea came from Annie. Apparently, while looking at the various shapes of metal parts in the factory, they somehow started to look like fabric to her. It may have been an idea that only Annie, with her hobby of sewing, could have come up with. The development was extremely difficult, but thanks to the wisdom and skills of the craftsmen, we somehow managed to create a prototype. From there, we went through trial and error countless times. Finally, the new fiber Ashley fiber was completed. I was part of the sales team that went to various companies to pitch it. Among them, Annie's work was particularly impressive. Her innate politeness and soft demeanor made her popular with the representatives of the companies we visited, and her attention to detail within the team allowed everyone to work efficiently. However, being a new product, we were often met with cold responses, unreasonably shunned or criticized. Honestly, there were times when I felt like giving up and doubted if this was really the right thing to do. But I think Annie's presence played a big role in everyone's ability to persevere at that time. Her attitude of never giving up and her cheerful demeanor no matter how busy she was resonated not only with me but with all the employees. Although it took a long time, thanks to our steady sales activities, the product gradually spread and began to be accepted and recognized. Around the time we started to feel that way, an influencer well-versed in industrial products introduced Ashley Fiber, which triggered an explosive increase in awareness. From there, we received so many inquiries that we thought the company's phones and internet might crash, and contracts were signed one after another. Perhaps because the name Ashley Industries started to be featured prominently in the media and within the industry, inquiries also increased in other departments such as industrial parts, which was our original business. We also re-signed contracts with previous clients, and the company's business performance made a remarkable recovery. No, it was more than a recovery. We achieved record sales since the company's founding and succeeded in turning around a company that had been in shambles. In the midst of such a rapid advance, I suddenly received a message from Annie's sister through the company. "I want to apologize to my sister. Please mediate for me." To be honest, I was angry, thinking why now of all times, but since Annie said it was okay to meet, I reluctantly sent a reply of consent. And on the promised day, although I wanted to be present, Annie gently declined, so I had no choice but to watch over the two of them from nearby. Annie gently comforted Mary, who was crying and apologizing. After talking for a bit, Mary left. The whole event lasted less than 10 minutes. She apologized a lot, so I decided to believe Mary's words. Is that okay? What if you're being deceived? Even so, it's fine. It might seem ridiculous, but I realized that Mary and my family are important to me after all, and I can't just push them away. I had various thoughts about Annie's words, but I swallowed them all. It was Annie's decision. I decided to support it. I see, I understand. But if it gets painful, make sure to rely on me. That's the only thing I want you to promise. Yeah, I promise. Thank you. Annie smiled. There was no hesitation in her expression. There was a small follow-up to the sisters' discussion. Apparently, Corny Technologies wanted to do business with us and requested a meeting. We had a long-standing relationship with Corny Technologies, but they would cozy up to us when we were doing well and quickly distance themselves when we were on the decline, maintaining a thin, long-term connection without severing ties completely. I think that's how they've navigated the world, but for us who were being treated conveniently, it wasn't amusing. However, I couldn't disregard my fiancé's family, so I reluctantly agreed. A few days later, After finishing a meeting with a client, I was in the parking lot next to the company. The moment I got out of the car, I was called out to Bob. Mary. It was Mary. I furrowed my brow, not understanding why she was here. I have some business to discuss with you today. A discussion. Then let's talk in the office. As I said that and turned to guide her, Mary's arms wrapped around my neck. In the moment I thought Mary's face was getting closer, I tore her body away. What do you think you're doing? I asked in a low voice, but Mary only gave a defiant smile. Then she said, "Hey there, sis," and waved her hand. Mary. Annie was there. Annie. Why are you? I noticed you were back and came to greet you. And so, you stumbled upon an inappropriate scene between your fiancé and sister. I didn't even touch you. Huh? You don't have to be shy about it. I couldn't help but glare at Mary, who spoke in an amused voice. However, Mary didn't even glance my way and walked up to Annie, who was standing there dumbfounded. Hey, sis. How do you feel right now? Frustrated? Are you going to yell? Or lose your composure? Come on, say something. Mary skipped around Annie, who remained silent. She was clearly provoking her. Mary. What is it? It's pointless to do that. I won't be shaken by something like this anymore. Huh? After saying that, Annie walked over to me. Then, she stood on her tiptoes and pressed her lips against mine. Huh? Annie. Mary seemed unable to comprehend Annie's sudden action and was frozen with her mouth wide open. As for me, I was dazed, recalling the soft sensation that lingered on my lips for just a moment. I won't hand over Bob. What? What are you saying? Just like that dress. He's important to me, so I can't give him up. So I'm sorry. Why? Hearing Annie's words, Mary's shoulders began to tremble. I instinctively stepped in front of Annie to shield her with my back. However, Annie pushed me aside and walked up to Mary. Mary, why can you apologize like that? To me, who did such terrible things to you? Why? Mary shouted and then broke down crying on the spot. Annie gently embraced Mary's shoulders. Ever since I was little, I couldn't help but envy you, sis. You were beautiful, kind, and good at studying. You were always the center of attention. When I was with you, I felt childish and hated it. But I liked being with you. It was comforting. I loved you so much, but I hated you just as much. But even though I had such mixed feelings, you were always kind to me. That's why it was always so painful. So that's how it was. When I was crying from the pain, Mom told me, Mary, you are fine just the way you are, but I couldn't understand what it meant. I wanted to be like you, sis. So what did she mean by saying I was fine the way I was? Before Mom could teach me, she went to heaven. Yeah. Annie's eyes were also wavering. I couldn't find any words to say to the two of them embracing each other, and all I could do was listen to their conversation. I wanted to be like you, sis. No, I wanted to be you. I thought if I imitated you, I could become you. But before I knew it, I was looking down on you, mistakenly thinking that I could become greater than you. I'm sorry. I'm the one who needs to apologize. I'm sorry. Sis, I'm so sorry. Mary, I didn't understand at all either. I always thought of you as cute and still very much a child. But the truth is, you've been thinking about all sorts of things since you were little. You were suffering, keeping it all inside. I'm sorry for not noticing. Sis. In the parking lot with the evening sun shining through, the two of them cried out loud while embracing each other. How many years' worth of tears were those? Bob, I'm sorry for my rudeness. Mary, who now had a peaceful expression as if a demon had been exorcised, apologized politely. Her eyes were swollen. Her cheeks were rough from tear stains, and her neatly styled hair and makeup were a mess. But her face had a different kind of beauty from Annie's. I'm glad you've calmed down. Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to talk to my father and Ray properly about what happened today, about sis, and about my feelings. I see. Don't push yourself too hard. Thank you. Mary smiled faintly at my words. It was a kind and gentle smile, and it somehow seemed similar to Annie's. Then, after smiling once more, Mary left without looking back. As we watched her retreating figure, Annie murmured, I wonder if we can be normal sisters from now on. I enveloped Annie's cold hand. With the way you two are now, I'm sure you can. There's no need to rush. You can take your time. Yeah, you're right. From now on, we have to face each other properly, looking straight at each other's faces. Tears overflowed from the corners of Annie's eyes as she said that with a smile. I gently wiped away those tears with my finger and kissed them. As she squirmed, looking ticklish, I embraced her, and this time, our lips met. A week later, a letter of apology arrived for Annie from her father and Ray. According to Annie, when she entered high school, her appearance closely resembled her deceased mother's. This apparently heightened the anxiety of Ray, who was her stepmother. The fear of the foundation crumbling beneath her feet. The family she had become with the kind sisters who had accepted her. A stranger who had suddenly appeared, despite the years of effort she had put in. The thought that no matter what, she could never win against that woman who had passed away. And what she ended up doing was pushing Annie, who resembled her mother, into a corner and doting on Mary, who resembled the person she loved. Even though Annie's father noticed that Ray's heart was on the verge of breaking, he left it as it was and even went along with it, deepening the darkness in her heart. Mary, who felt joy in being doted on more than her talented older sister, and Annie, who mistakenly thought that not speaking up was kindness and chose to endure it. Everyone made small mistakes one after another. Ray and Mary decided to go to a psychiatrist accompanied by their father. It may take time, but I hope there will come a day when they can spend time together with smiles. I know it's easier said than done, but that's the future my precious person wishes for. So I, too, wish for that future to come. As for the company, thanks to the huge success of Ashley Fiber, our performance has improved dramatically, and we decided to renovate the old company building and factories. It seems that in my father's generation, they built factories and branch offices in various locations, but I decided to set my primary goal as first improving the facilities of this company and creating an environment where all the employees who have supported the company until now can work comfortably with less stress. When Annie first came here and joined the tea break time to get along with everyone, it seems there were various requests. We're currently plotting to introduce massage chairs to ease the strain on the bodies of our most senior craftsmen. Honey, a letter from Mary arrived. This one is addressed to you. Again, since that incident, I had somehow gained Mary's affection, and now I receive letters addressed to me along with the letters addressed to Annie. The content is what you would call a love letter. Today's stationery is also filled with cute heart marks. Hey, Annie, can't we do something about this? That girl can be quite stubborn, and when she gets into something, it lasts a long time. Annie didn't seem particularly bothered and showed no signs of stopping Mary. I don't know what kind of agreement has been made between the sisters, but I wish they would consider my position as the one receiving these letters. I'm devoted to Annie alone, after all. I thought she preferred slender princes. When I mumbled that, Annie sat on my lap and nuzzled her face against my chest. You're a sufficiently wonderful prince, aren't you? You may not be slender, but that's what makes you even more wonderful. I'm honored by your praise, princess. I said that in a slightly playful tone and stood up, lifting Annie in my arms. It's what you would call a princess carry. Hey, put me down. I must be heavy. Annie was embarrassed and flailing about, but I ignored her and carried her to the bed. You're not heavy at all. That's it. Maybe I should make it a daily routine to carry you to bed like this. Geez, you dummy. Annie clinging tightly to my neck was so adorable, I couldn't stand it. I kissed her reddened cheek and turned off the room lights. Even with family, a small misunderstanding can lead to things not going well. If you keep them tightly secured, thinking they're precious, it becomes suffocating and unbearable. Through meeting Annie and spending time with her, I almost made a mistake once, but I learned the importance of trusting the other person. Trusting someone multiplies the power you have and makes your heart many times stronger. Building a solid relationship of trust with the other person. I thought that I want to make an effort to build such relationships with the people near me now and the people I will meet in the future.